Good evening. Welcome to BGSU's virtual President's Day weekend. I'm Brandy Barheit and I work in the Office of Admissions. You have probably seen me a lot this weekend because we have been hosting a whole slew of virtual presentations on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And now this is the very end. We are closing out our virtual President's Day weekend with two very special guests, BGSU President Rodney Rogers, and he is joined by Amy Swank, Director of the Office of Parent, Family, and New Student Connections, which is a brand new office here at BGSU. We're going to be talking about how BGSU is committed to students and families. And I'm going to now turn it over to our guest of honor. And then what we're going to do is take some questions, and then I'll pop back on screen probably around 6:30 or so and do a live Q&A with the president and Amy Swank. So thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. I'll see you soon. We'll keep on monitoring those questions throughout and try to get to as many as we can.
Great, Brandy. Thank you so much. And as Brandy said, I'm Rodney Rogers, president here at BGSU. It's certainly my honor to serve in this role. I happen to be an alum of Bowling Green State University. Before returning to Ohio and BG, my wife and I spent some time out on the West Coast, but really had an opportunity to come back to a terrific university, one that certainly has been influential in my life, and to serve in this role is certainly an honor. I'll also say I come to you as a father, my wife and I, parents of two college-age sons who actually just graduated from college this past spring in 2020. And so like many of our prospective students that are on the line right now, that are listening in, if you will, their experience was disrupted by this pandemic. And I certainly am aware of how this pandemic has impacted so many people. And so to our prospective students, as you go through your senior year, I just want to tell you, you have demonstrated grit. You have demonstrated a type of flexibility and adaptability that no one before you, at least in recent years, have experienced. And I think you're going to find those sorts of experiences, ways in which you found a way forward, is going to come back to have great benefit to you as you take this next step in your college journey, if you will, in your life journey and your next step in college. So I just wanted to start by saying a couple of things here at Bowling Green. There's some things that we really pride ourselves in. And if you happen to be in a earlier session that I had an opportunity to be a part of over the weekend, I emphasize just a couple of guiding principles, and I think these guiding principles are important to highlight once again, because what we really want to talk about right now is the importance of families, parents, and how important they are to the success of our students. And it goes back to some of the guiding principles that explain the philosophy that we use at Bowling Green State University. And there's three kind of guiding principles. One is this idea of community, the power of a community to not only support each other, not only to learn from each other, not only to gain new insights from each other, but also to support each other. It's an opportunity where we encourage students to challenge each other's with ideas, to engage in the academic pursuits, to be involved across the community. And what we call it is belonging. It's this concept that we want every student, each student, to belong, part of that community. But at the same time, as a major comprehensive university, our second guiding principle is all about opportunities to stand out. Opportunities that students will find at major comprehensive universities like a Bowling Green. Study abroad, although we've not done as much of that right now, but certainly we want to get back to the importance of study abroad, undergrad research projects, the organizations, clubs, being a part, being in a play, being in a musical, playing in a artistic group, being a part of Falcon Media, being a part of the social media. It could be being involved in intramural sports or club sports. All of those sorts of activities are really opportunities for our students to practice their leadership skills, their ability to work with others, because what we know is part of this college journey is allowing you to stand out. But ultimately, the third guiding principle we use is making sure that what we are doing here at the institution is making sure that each of our students have that opportunity to launch when they leave us in a few years. As they go through this experience, they have their degree in hand, but more important, they have had an educational experience that is more than a degree, and they are prepared to go far. So you will hear us talk a lot about belonging, community, the power of community. You will hear us about encouraging each of our students to really take advantage of everything we have to offer to kind of stand out, find their purpose, passion, and stand out, but ultimately to what end? So when that student leaves Bowling Green, they are in a position to go out and live a meaningful, productive life and to make a difference. Because you see, as a public university, we think we do have an obligation to the public. The taxpayers and citizens of Ohio and the United States are also investing in our students as they go through this educational process. And we want to make sure they understand kind of that important role that as a college graduate of Bowling Green, they have a chance to really make a difference in their world. So those are the guiding principles that we certainly use at Bowling Green as we make decisions, as we think about what we're trying to do as an institution. And that's why we're very interested in recruiting great students who share some common vision there, that they want to be a part of a community, they want to engage, they want to kind of push themselves to be all they can be, and they want to make a difference. But here is one thing we really learned during the last 343 days since Governor DeWine here in the state of Ohio declared a state of emergency. We learned that while we were doing an okay job communicating with families and parents, but we weren't where we thought we needed to be to make sure that we were fully taking advantage of our community, and our community includes families. Because the communities become the community is a very powerful idea, but we've got to make sure that all members of our community have a chance to support each of our students so they're successful. And quite honestly, you as family and parents of prospective students, you are absolutely very committed to their success. We know that, as we are. And so we said, you know what we need to do is we need to bring together a lot of the different programming we're doing, but bring that into a unified approach where we're fully working with our families and our parents to make sure that all of them are engaged and are unified and aligned to support the success of our students. And so we went out nationally to say, who's the best person that we could hire at Bowling Green? And we found a woman who has established a similar office at Gonzaga University. She was a national leader in this field, was the president of the National Association. And everybody we talked to said, you know, you ought to talk to Amy Swank. That woman knows what she's doing. She's done amazing things at Gonzaga. And we were fortunate to have a wonderful conversation and went through the process. And Amy agreed to join us here at Bowling Green State University. And so I'm really pleased to kind of turn this over now to my colleague, my new colleague. She's been here now for a few months, but Amy Swank. And we're just so happy to have Amy as a colleague here at Bowling Green State University. And as she talks through her philosophy about the importance of families and parents, I think you'll see why we believe this is so aligned with our guiding principle of building a robust and strong community where each member of our community has the opportunity to be highly successful, truly stand out, and prepares them to go far. So, Amy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, President Rogers. Thank you for the kind words too. I truly feel absolutely privileged to be able to be a part of the BG community. As many of you are exploring this community for yourselves, I can honestly speak to just coming into this community just a few months ago and being new and trying to figure it out, just like our students will be here shortly. But what attracted me most to Bowling Green was this idea of belonging. And I felt from the moment I visited that I could belong here. And the warmth of the university and the warmth of its people, as well as the authentic community that I felt like I was gaining, made it an easy decision to move 1,700 miles across the US with my family. So I feel very lucky to be able to spend some time with you all tonight, and want to share just a brief few slides with all of you. Many of you may have joined my colleague Megan Arnold and I a few nights ago around transitioning to college for both students and families. And what I'll share with you is these few slides will cover that, but I've added in a few more. The presentation will be very short because we want to be able to get to your questions and be able to chat with you about where you're at and what you're experiencing and what you want to learn about Bowling Green. So I'll just share our next slide around this idea of families matter. And I think President Rogers did a wonderful job of being able to say that the creation of this office and bringing together the different programs and services that already were in place at Bowling Green was really important. And there was a lot of intentionality. COVID not only helped Bowling Green see the value of families, but really we also saw that across the country. Many colleges and universities really understand that families matter. And this slide, I think, is important for y'all to take a glance at. Your advice and that your students will really be seeking that advice from you while they're with us is really important. And it doesn't change that much from their first year to when they graduate. And so I wanted to make note that we really want to look to you all as partners, and we want to be able to include you in this work. We will offer programs and services so that you can be the best partner to the institution as possible, and wanted to show you that you really do matter. And this is a national stat that I wanted to share tonight. So we'll move on to the next slide about this life cycle of family engagement. And your student will experience different moments in their own life cycle at BGSU or in college. And the same is true for our families. And many of you are transitioning into collegiate families, and your role is changing. And I know I've shared this with some of you, and I hope that it's okay to share it again, but you're an everyday manager right now for your student, and that's doctor's appointments and maybe getting them to school and to practice and art camp and all those things that you do to manage their everyday experience. That changes dramatically when you become a college family and you become a spectator to their experience. And so we wanted to show you what this looks like and prepare you to be those great partners to us. And so we're literally at the beginning of this diagram. We're in the recruitment and yield phase. And we really see you as those advisors, and that your students are turning to you to even help make this decision on where should they go? Where do they belong? And then you'll transition into the orientation and adjustment phase, just like your students will. And we recognize that you'll go through your own transition and adjustment, and we'll provide you with tools so that you can prepare for what that looks like for you as a family, but also what does that orientation and transition look like for your student, and how do you help support them? I say that it may be that you're 5 miles apart, 500 miles apart, or 5,000 miles apart. But wherever you are, we will give you the tools to be able to support your student. And it's important that you're involved, and we really look at this partnership because when you're involved, your students are academically more successful and they graduate on time. We want that, and you want that. And so we know that that toolkit and being able to provide you that support is really important. As President Rogers was talking about, your student will go through a phase where they'll also start exploring, maybe career readiness, maybe doing an internship or a co-op, or maybe studying abroad. And then you'll kind of move into the next phase of this diagram where they're exploring and they're challenging themselves in the classroom and outside the classroom in ways that they've never done that. we really see that you'll start to phase into the role of being a champion for the university. Maybe you work at a really great company and you want to hire a Falcon. And so you'll engage with our office and engage with the institution in different ways. And I know it's hard to imagine, but before you know it, we'll be celebrating next steps and commencement and graduation. And you will blink and we will be here. And I like to share that with prospective families, because it doesn't seem like that is you're currently trying to seek the opportunity of where you'll attend, but I promise it to be true. What does transition look like for families, and how might you use this tool now as you start to figure out where your student will be heading? We really want to create independent problem solvers at BGSU. And so it's easy as family members to want to swoop in and fix it. I know I have a high school daughter who's a junior, so I'm not that far off from what you're all experiencing. And I want to fix it for her sometimes. And I have to really pull myself back and think about, how do I take a breath? How do I pause and not respond to their problem? And then how do we reframe that problem and get them to determine what can you do to maybe find the right resources at BG? What can you do to solve this problem while you're on campus? And so these are just a couple tools, and then we hope that you'll guide them, even guide them from the side, regardless of how far of those miles separate you all. So with these types of tools, we really want you to empower your student, and we will continue to give you tools while you're at BGSU so that you can support that independent experience for your student. And really, as President Rogers was talking about, that meaningful career, that joyful life, that purposeful life as they leave the institution. So this is just one example of that transition and the tools that we can provide you. I want to talk about persistence to graduation. I talked a little bit about how important this is for us to celebrate with all of you graduation and commencement weekends. In order for your student to persist, I think it's important for you to help them now set those goals to what specifically are they hoping to achieve when they're at college? What do you expect as a family that they'll experience, or are there expectations around grades and academic expectations? Those are great conversations to start having now. What does that look like for you as a family? How can you support your student? And know that there's going to be bumps. I don't know of a college student yet that hasn't had a bump along the way. Some larger than others, but expect bumps along the way. But if you set your goals now and help your students set those goals, they'll be successful. We'll share that it's important for them to be involved in at least one co-curricular activity or group. Or I even say a job. Having a job on campus connects them to offices and staff members and faculty, and it gives them a connecting point. If they're involved in a club, an organization, or doing service learning in some way, that'll also help them persist. It really only takes one thing. We know that to be true. And so I would encourage talking to your student now, what do they want to be involved with? How do they find their passion and their purpose in college, and having those conversations so you can guide them into their collegiate experience. And then I would talk about helping them connect with their faculty member or a staff member. Again, we know if they have a connection on campus to one of those folks or more, they're more likely to graduate and continue to persist. And there's so many people on the BG campus that want to help. Your student will not go alone through this experience. There's so many people that want to be in that space with your student. And so I would encourage you to talk to your students about what does that type of relationship look like? Who do they want to meet? Who do they want to be connected with? Hopefully that's something that you can all be prepared for so they can be very successful before they even start. This is my last slide. I just wanted to share with you, there's lots of ways to support your student, but our office is one of them. We want you to stay connected with us. We have a student referral form where you can contact us at any time to share with us a concern or a way that your student needs support. We have a website, we have social media, we will have lots of publications for you when you arrive at orientation and beyond, and we'll continue to guide you so that you can guide your student and be that great partner to us. I will say too that when something doesn't feel right and you aren't sure who to call, this office and and my team will be here and available to be able to assist you and get you or your student to the right connecting point on campus. And I would say send some love notes, send lots of mail. College students love snail mail. And any way that you can continue to connect them to home, so that even if you're all those miles away, or even just five miles away, they have something to connect them back to you, and that again will help them continue to persist. Let them know you care about them, you love them, you're here to support them, and that I want to say to our families, you've done a really great job, and to be very proud to be at this moment in your experience as you start to explore the next phase. I just feel really honored to be able to spend some time with you. I think the president and I are going to take some Q&A now and turn it over to all of you to be able to help you decide about BGSU. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, President Rogers. The questions are starting to come into me by direct message, so I'm going to probably read some of them out loud for the good of the group, because not everyone's going to see them in the chat. Amy, I think this one is more for you. The question is, my students' high school experience has included a lot of communication from the school, from their teachers. College is going to be different, but how can I still stay engaged? Like, who am I allowed to talk to?
That's a great question, Brandy. Thank you. So there is a FERPA that protects college students' privacy. So that's something I often tell with families that will be very different from high school. You have access to everything. You can look at grades within a minute of them posting practically. And so you won't have access to all of that unless your student grants you that access. And so that's a conversation to have with your student now. What do you expect of them? Do you expect that you'll have a conversation with my daughter, Ella? I don't check her grades. I know, shocking. I don't even know my log-on credentials. What I've done with her is I've always said, let's go to coffee. Let's talk about your grades. Let's talk about how you're doing. What assistance do you need? Do you need extra tutoring, etc.? And so I've established those ground rules with her. And then inevitably she told me, oh, I'm getting a B in honors chemistry and it's really, really hard. And then we've had a great conversation. So I would have that conversation with your student about, what do you expect? And how do you expect to talk about grades or access points? The other thing too is, I agree with you. Our families have come to know communication all the time, and the high schools have done a really great job. We want to do that same thing here at BG. So we'll have our newsletter, an electronic newsletter, again on social. I mean, today I posted something on social media about removing cars from the streets so that they aren't ticketed because of the snow plows. So we are trying to give you relevant information in real time. Additionally, the university sends out and has been sending out great COVID updates from different key partners, including our chief health officer. So I think there will be some stuff that our office will produce, but the university will do a great job in keeping in communication with all of you through a variety of different ways, including webinars and office hours. And even last night I threw out there maybe having some regional events so that we can have some families build community within their community. So more to come, but communication is key to keep creating a great partnership.
Amy, I know you're new to BGSU, but I'm hoping your daughter will consider becoming a Falcon. Would that be fall of 2022?
Yes. We've got some work to do, Brandy, but I think that it's on her top 10 list, so okay. We'll keep at it.
Hey, as long as BG's on a list, that's where we'll start. I think this question is perfect for Dr. Rogers. Kim in the chat is asking about, what is the fall going to look like for my student? I know that I've heard throughout President's Day weekend, parents, families, even students being a little bit worried about how COVID-19 might impact their experience, especially since it's already impacted their high school experience.
Right. Thank you, Brandy. So, throughout this pandemic, here at Bowling Green, we have tried to always find a way forward. So, we did move immediately to remote in the spring, as you know, as most places did across the country. And then, but this fall, we tried to provide both face-to-face, hybrid, remote, and online options. So we started a program called Design My BGSU in the summer where we gave students options. So we're one of those universities that did offer face-to-face, but we also provided students remote options or online options if that's what they so chose to select. Now, we also had to try to manage with our faculty and staff to think about how do we deliver certain options. So, you know, a lot of this was trying to be very flexible and adaptable. But we kept our campus open the entire fall. And so far here in the spring, we've had some very low numbers, COVID numbers. And I think part of that was we early on were one of the few publics in Ohio that went out and hired a chief health officer who was a former health commissioner as well as clinician. And he has really spent a lot of time helping all of our programming, our student life programming, academic, athletics, all of them to think through how do we manage our way through this with the guiding principle, back to a guiding principle about it. It is about community, but it's also trying to find a way forward. And so for fall 21, our planning mode right now is we will be primarily face-to-face. So we will be monitoring where we are in terms of CDC and Ohio Department of Health recommendations and protocols with respect to face coverings and distancing. But our planning model is we want to get back to face-to-face instruction. And we've always had some face-to-face. Here at Bowling Green, about 50% of our undergrad courses have been face-to-face, about 25% remote, 25% online. This fall, we want to get back to primarily face-to-face at the undergrad level. Now, the thing is that what we're really learning from and what we're doing this spring, we learned from the fall what was working and what wasn't working, and we made improvements. For fall 21, we're really encouraging our faculty to be creative and you know, how did you use technology that you want to continue to use? And so, for example, we had a faculty member tell us, you know, I'll tell you, Rodney, I will never have just face-to-face office hours. What I'm always going to run is a virtual office hours and face-to-face, and I'm going to do it at the same time because it brings more students together and they talk about the issues or the problems that they may be working on. This was a math class. And so you know, his comment was, I'll never forget about Zoom virtual meetings. There's an example of an innovation that I think will continue. There's other sorts of opportunities where I've heard faculty tell me, you know, we have learned how precious class time is. And so what we want to make sure is when we have our students face to face, those are opportunities for discussion and working in teams and coaching and mentoring the students. And some of the lecture, maybe that stays up in the cloud, but what we want to do is use class time to really enhance the learning. So I quite honestly think fall 21 is we will be even better than we were in fall 19, 18, 17, 16, because we have learned certain things during this past year that will make the offerings more robust. Now that's the classroom, but I can also tell you Res Hall and student life and student activities, we also will be much more face-to-face. Now, this is the reason we're making this as our planning, primary planning model is because one, we believe the vaccines will be even more robust as we go through the spring. And at this point, our positivity rate on this campus is relatively low, quite honestly. And that has a lot to do with just this sense of community and how our students and faculty and staff have been so good with each other, finding a way forward, you know, following the health and safety protocols. But we've been committed. And what we've noticed is the students overwhelmingly want a face-to-face experience. And that is why that is our primary planning model for the fall. The only caveat would be if public health conditions would be different in the month of August. We would need to adjust appropriately. But our planning model for this fall is to be very intensive face-to-face.
Thank you, President Rogers. The questions are coming in fast and furious, so I'm trying to remain calm as I write them down, and I am still paying attention. But this question would be for you, Amy Swank. Have a parent in the chat who's asking about the mental health resources available at BGSU for students, if you could address that.
Thanks, Brandy. That's a very important question, and obviously something that's on the mind of our families. And I would say that BGSU really cares about the health and well-being of our students. And there's many services that can help with the mental health, as well as just the well-being of our students. And so I'll start with the Counseling Center is free with the cost of tuition. They have in-person and online appointments. So whatever your student is most comfortable with, they're available. And through COVID, the office has actually talked a lot about feeling like they're more accessible to students in the process. I will say that there's a lot for your students to be involved in when you think about that well-being too. So going to the rec center and working out. I've been going over to the rec center too, because the days are a little gray right now, and I need to be physically active so that I can feel good. So I would say the Counseling Center is obviously a great resource for students, but also other ways of seeking out well-being and connectivity on campus, like the rec center or intramurals, et cetera. So I hope that that's helpful and answers that question, but a great resource for all of our students for sure.
Yeah, I like when you mentioned the rec center. Do you want to add to that, President Rogers?
Yeah, if I could, I'll say that Ben Beatty is our Chief Health Officer, and Ben, when we hired Ben, his focus right now is certainly our response to COVID and the pandemic. But we will get to the other side of this, and I hope it's sooner rather than later. But his responsibility then moving forward as the Chief Health Officer is to coordinate our health and wellness strategies across the university. And so with Ben's background, it's everything from, thinking about nutrition, the importance of nutrition, certainly overseeing the counseling center, overseeing accessibility services, managing our Falcon Health, which is our student health clinic, thinking about health and wellness, and Amy said this in the rec center, and all of those programmings, because we know the mental and physical health, there's an important connection there. It's so integrated, so connected. And Ben, one of the reasons he was so excited about this opportunity was, okay, we're going to get through this pandemic, and then what will I do? And he became very excited about having a very intentional strategy around the health and wellness of all of the members of our community, especially, of course, our students.
Let's stay with you, President Rogers, because there is another question in the chat about how BGSU is helping students who feel academically overwhelmed during COVID, that Zoom fatigue, unsure where to turn.
Well, I will tell you the Zoom fatigue is alive and well. This past weekend we had some traditions at Bowling Green. We have our mascots that no one knows who our mascots are. So there's an unveiling of our mascot to the community because it's a secret this year while they are Freddie and Frida Falcon, as well as we have another group called Sick, and there's this unveiling. And so we had we had a virtual, but also a live in-person component of that. And it was just so important to, my wife and I just love being a part of the campus and engaging with students, and the energy that you get from engaging with a group of students is just so important. And so we enjoyed all that sort of opportunity. And that is what we want to make sure that we kind of get back to have that sort of opportunity for all of our students in this face-to-face environment. So we want to just make sure that when we are doing the planning for fall, that those sorts of activities are things that we absolutely have been mindful and planning, and those will continue to have actually even more of those during the spring term as we begin to prepare for summer and fall.
I'm glad you mentioned that desire to have the in-person experience. This might be a good time to note that BGSU is open for in-person tours. So I'll have one of our moderators drop that link into the chat in case you want to sign up for that. But speaking of in-person, I was
And
wondering.
hey, Brandy, can I, so I didn't directly answer the question, actually. Now I just realized that the reason I said that story is the importance of that in person, and that's what we're moving towards in the fall. But we have a program called the Learning Commons at the institution, and the Learning Commons, there again, it's included in the tuition and all of that. It's available. It's on the first floor of our library. And it's an academic coaching center. So if you're a student who's got a B+ and you want an A, you can go to that coaching center. If you're a student who maybe is really struggling with some of the concepts, maybe it's a calculus course or a pre-calc, and part of that is because you've been virtual this past year and perhaps aren't quite where you want it to be, those coaches are available there. So what we are planning for the fall is to have additional coaches in place to assist our students during this time of transition. So that is very important to us. And that is part of this whole supportive community that is a guiding principle at Bowling Green. So wanted to make sure we got to that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you added that. And I know that the Learning Commons has been doing both in-person and virtual tutoring opportunities. Again, a benefit of COVID, realizing that we can be more accessible to students and meet them where they're at. Amy, speaking of in-person, we have a question about what will orientation look like this summer? And I know students have the opportunity to do an in-person or virtual. Overwhelmingly, they seem to be picking the in-person. Can you tell us what that's going to look like?
Absolutely. Oh, our team has been planning for orientation, and I think that we are just as excited to be able to host that with all of you. But we also recognize that there's different comfort levels. So SOAR, our orientation program, will be offered online if students want to take part and families want to take part in that way, or they can attend an in-person SOAR. And I'm hoping that one of our moderators, oh, looks like Megan already from my team has already put something in, has put the link in, and so you can sign up for that now. We have all types of events and programs and resources for both students and families to attend in person. The really great thing that we added this year because of COVID, but I think will last well beyond in our post-COVID world, is all of our students and families will have access to an online orientation. And that will cover a lot of those logistical questions or just general questions about Bowling Green. And I think of our online orientation as almost as like a 101 class. Everything you need to know about Bowling Green State University will be a part of your online orientation. The great thing is too, families and students can go back multiple times through the entire first semester. If there's a question about financial aid, or there's a question about dining in, you know, they just didn't remember the answer, you can go to that, and it'll be a resource that'll be available to all of our students and families. And then when you transition into either the online experience or the in-person SOAR experience, Brandy, we were talking about it. We're picking out songs that we're going to be playing. We're going to roll out the orange carpet for all of you, and we're really excited to be able to introduce you to our orientation leaders, to our community, to our leadership here. And I don't want to give away too many surprises, but I'm really looking forward to it. And it'll be my first one, so I'll get to experience it with some of you maybe.
Plus, orientation is going to have that opportunity to tour the residence halls. And speaking of residence halls, I think this question probably is more for Dr. Rogers, but there's a question that just popped up in the chat. What happens if a student tests positive while they live on campus? Are they quarantined somewhere else, or do they stay in their dorm room?
So our policy has been this year, we reserved one of our apartment complexes that the university manages as a space for isolation. So if a student tests positive that live on campus, we asked them to move to to this apartment complex, which is on campus, so it's not that far away. And then what we do is provide full food service, breakfast, lunch, dinner. It really is an apartment, has internet, it's got all the technology in it, so they can continue with their classes. And so that is kind of the model that we have used this year. Now, many of those students who that might have tested positive over the course of this past year, some of those decided to return home, which they can. Ben Beatty obviously works with those students just to make sure that they're thinking about the impact it may have with family members or others. But we absolutely offer that isolation space. And then, you know, we went with a lot of single occupancy this year, and we had some roommates, but the roommates had to agree to be treated as a family unit. And so if in fact a member of the family unit was exposed, they might have had to quarantine, which is different than isolation, of course, but they might have quarantined in their regular residence hall. How we'll handle it in the fall is something that we will continue to work with the public health officials and following CDC guidelines and such. But at this point, we assume we will be back to double occupancy in the res halls in the fall. But they would have options for singles as well for our students. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, I was also thinking it might be a fun time for our moderators to drop in the chat our video of our robots on campus that help deliver food and coffee to our students. I know that that is unique to BGSU. Amy, this question's, I think, more suited for you. We have a question from a parent. You were mentioning in your slides that transition. This particular student is a first-generation student. What support exists for a first gen student so their family doesn't have a lot of experience with college and the college process?
I might need some help from President Rogers on this because I'm still getting familiar with the community and all the support services we have. But we really want to honor our first generation families and our students and recognize that your experience will be very unique because you don't have that experience to draw upon. And so our office is working very closely with colleagues to be able to create programming. When you attend SOAR, both students and families will have an opportunity to connect with the affinity groups so that you can connect with other students and other families that are also first generation. And so we honor and celebrate first generation families and students that are on campus through different activities throughout the year. And there will be a reoccurring piece in our newsletter that is specifically for first generation families to connect you more deeply with resources. What I'll say to families though, is this office is designed exactly for you. I'm a first generation college student and I love this work and want to probably continue it forever and ever because I recognize that my mom and dad could have used an Amy Swank, could have used an office and resources and somebody to call or to provide them with those tools so that they could have supported me. I'm very close with my family, but my mom and dad actually never came to campus until graduation. And my dad was very emotional, but that wasn't a place that they saw themselves. And so I really take it to heart that we need to serve our families and our students of first generation because I know that it's so needed and there's different resources and support that is needed for those families. But I want to honor that too and celebrate such a cool moment for you as a family. So I don't know all of the resources we have on campus. That's the part where, 3 months in, I'm still going to probably leave out a couple people. So I'll ask my colleagues to help me fill in some gaps.
And Amy, you had mentioned an affinity group, and there is an affinity group for first generation that, students can identify themselves as first gen. And we've got a variety of faculty and staff that are also first gen. So as Amy is, so am I, a first generation, although it's been a few years ago since I was in my undergrad. But we've got, and during that opening weekend, you'll see buttons that faculty staff will have that, I'm a first gen as well. And what we want to do is make sure that students, the advantage I had is I had an older brother and sister that went to college. So I was first gen, but I wasn't the first in family. And so, my siblings certainly helped a lot in that transition. And my parents had learned some things with my brother and sister, but I think we are very focused on making sure that each member of our community are aware of those resources that are available. So there's that affinity group. And then I hope you've heard about our life design and college design coaches. And that approach that we're using here at Bowling Green is pretty unique. And so each student coming in this fall will have an opportunity to work with a design coach that will work with them in a very intentional way to think about how to fully leverage their college experience, how to design their college experience to position them to design their life when they leave. And that group, that coach, will also be very aware of making sure that our first gen students that may be one of their mentees are aware of those resources that are available.
Thanks for that. Questions are still coming in. We'll take a few more. Dr. Rogers, if you can address campus safety. We have a parent asking about, BG safety, students walking to and from class, maybe attending a late night meeting. You can kind of talk about where the resources BGSU provides.
So physical safety, right? Okay. So as you know, we are in a pretty traditional college town. It's while we're 20 minutes from a larger urban area and the Toledo metropolitan area. Bowling Green, we are in a very traditional college town. When college students arrive at this institution here in BG, we double the size of the town. And so I jokingly say, our Kroger, Meijer, and Walmart stores have they have 25 checkout lines in each of those. In the summers, maybe there's one or two open. During the academic year, typically pre-COVID, they would all be open. So the town doubles in size. And so I bring that up because there is this sense of community in this town about watching out for each other. Obviously, we have our own, our public safety officers that are constantly moving around campus, but they also coordinate with the local city police department because we have about, we've got 6,200 students living on campus. There's another 12,000 living off campus here in the community. And so we're very aware of that. We are very proud in a very, very low crime rate, if you will, and certainly any kind of physical violence. But we try to make sure we're protecting all of that at all times. Now, we also make sure that during the orientation, we want to, sometimes you're in a small town and people leave their, let their safety guard down. And so it's important just to make sure that, obviously you're walking in lit areas and all of those sorts of things. We do offer a service certainly late at night for any students who wish to call an officer, or a student volunteer will escort, people around campus. But we're very fortunate, and I'm knocking on wood here, but we're very fortunate that we've had a very, very safe campus at Bowling Green State University. And I think a lot of that has to do with the size of campus and this community that has been created here. People watch out for each other, and we've been fortunate not to have any major problems.
That's great. I think we're gonna be leading to some closing remarks soon. We don't have too many more questions coming in. So with that, I would like maybe Amy just to address some next steps. Like, what can incoming students and families expect to hear from you for the next few months? I know that we're leading up to orientation in the summer, but will we have some opportunities to engage with you in March and April?
Absolutely. And I would just say that our colleagues and Brandy in particularly will make sure that you have lots to read as you're trying to make this really important decision in your next step. So the university will continue to communicate with you. I'll be holding some office hours in the coming weeks. I know President Rogers will be joining me as well. We'll have all types of on our social media. We'll have all types of pieces that we're sharing, so you can get a glimpse into what is this community, what does it have to offer my student, what does it have to offer us as a family. So be on the lookout for all of those communications. I'm always available if anybody wants to chat with me, wants to have a conversation about what this community means to me. I can honestly say that it's a very relatable to many of you as you make this decision. And hopefully I'll be able to answer it. I might not know all the logistical questions. I'm still learning a lot about what BGSU has to offer. But I will say this as I close out my remarks, and I think the most important thing, and the president has shared this, is, and the reason why it was easy to move 1,700 miles from what I've always known as home. And I think I should say easy when I think of 1,700 miles, right? Those probably don't go hand in hand very often, but what made it easy is I felt like I could belong here. And when I think about being a future college family ourselves and knowing our daughter is a junior, I can't want for anything more than a place where she belongs. And ultimately, maybe even where we belong as a family, so that we can help her be successful. And so I'll leave with this community in a very short amount of time has made me feel like I can belong and I can thrive as a professional and I can do great work for our students and our families. So it already literally I just started in November, has become a very special place. And many of my colleagues that are on this call, including the president, have made me feel like this is home. And so as you make this decision and you're discerning as a family and students, maybe when you look at our website and you watch all of these videos, learn as much as you can about us and find and see if this is a place that you can belong.
Amy, I've been with you a lot this weekend, and you always wear your heart on your sleeve, which I think families and students will appreciate. I will turn it over to Dr. Rogers for some final comments. The title of our session was Families Matters, which I think that theme has resonated throughout the whole night. So Dr. Rogers.
Great, thank you, Brandy, and to each of our prospective students that may be on the line, and to their families and parents that are joined us in this Zoom call. I want to thank you for spending the last hour with us and hearing from my great colleagues that are part of this wonderful community we call Bowling Green State University. You know, as you begin to think about these next step and your decision about where you will spend some time in this next step of your journey, it's important that you find a community, a university where you've got that opportunities where you do have a sense of belonging, as Amy said. And so we want to make sure, obviously, we want you to make sure you give Bowling Green a great shot. We want you at Bowling Green. But most importantly, we want you to find that institution where you will thrive and you will go out and do amazing things. Now, I say that because I want you also to know Bowling Green State University is a selective admission institution. What that means is if a student is admitted to BGSU, we believe, based upon their hard work and the credentials they bring and the success they've had, we believe they will and can be successful at Bowling Green State University, because that's what selective admissions schools do. And so for that, we take that very seriously. So once a student chooses to come to Bowling Green, we take it very seriously that we need to be there to support them for their success. And that's why we talk about community belonging, opportunity to stand out, and ultimately to go far. But what we know is if the student does their part, we will do our part. And our part is to support each of our students uh, academically, yes. Um, uh, Mental and physical health and wellness, yes. The ability to explore and find their purpose and passion, and ultimately to be prepared to go out and live a meaningful and productive life, whatever major they may choose. And as a public university, I alluded to this at the beginning, our mantra here is a public university for the public good. And how we do our part to help the public good is making sure we've got graduates that have been prepared to go out and make a difference in their families, in their communities, in their state, nation, and the world. Make the place a little bit better. I think each of us, if we can do that as we move forward, we're going to do well, but we'll also do good if we can make our communities, our families, just a little bit better. And that is certainly what we try to do here at Bowling Green, and to inspire our students. And we've got a great group of faculty and staff that are absolutely committed to this community and to supporting our students to allow them to go out and do amazing things. And so on behalf of Bowling Green State University and our over 190,000 alumni that have come through this institution over the last 110 plus years, we're honored that you are thinking about Bowling Green. We hope to see you in the fall. As I say, everybody looks good in orange, don't you think? It's a great color, orange and brown. But seriously, we would love to see you at BGSU. We hope you have a wonderful evening. And if Amy or I or Brandy or any of our colleagues that are on the call can answer any questions, I hope you will reach out. rrogers@bgsu.edu. Send me an email. If I don't know the answer, I know somebody who does. And so we are absolutely committed to your students' success, to their future as they come to Bowling Green State University. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. From our BG home to yours, that's a wrap on BGSU Virtual President's Day weekend. In a few days, we're going to send everyone a link where they can review anything that was said today, but also catch some of the sessions that they may have missed. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're still on and you want to turn on your camera and say hi to the president, say hi to Amy Swank, we would be glad to give you a little wave.
All right.
Hello.
I want to call out my wife who's on the call. I didn't know she was here. I am sorry, Sandy.
No,
You're
I
here.
just, hi all.
Hi.
I'm glad we can meet virtually because the snow is getting a little crazy out there, so be careful.
I'll drive carefully home. Okay. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, President Rogers. Good night.
Be careful if it's snowing hard out there.
Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. You too.